of playful diversions that could absorb your time when you weren't worrying about the end of the world. Seven dealt with surprisingly mature subject matter, from an inclusion of cross-dressing as a mission objective to an open reference to prostitution. Barrett was the first leader bold enough to utter several obscenities, and the only central black character in the entire franchise. It was also the first entry to show blood. They say the mettle of a man is tested in adversities, and anyone who would dare stand against Sephiroth would find out immediately what they were made of. Therefore, it's ironic that Cloud didn't realize who he really was. Sephiroth was the strongest soldier alive, but wouldn't rest until he controlled the planet. He sought to bring Meteor down to the surface, tearing a wound so deep that the life stream would emerge to cleanse it. There he would join with it, becoming a god with the planet's pulse at his fingertips. Aeris also rediscovered her identity as a direct descendant of the Cetra, or Ancients, a race that nearly vanished thousands of years ago. They were run off their homeworld by Genova, a vampiric alien lifeform that crash-landed in a meteor long before anyone could remember. Cloud's feelings were split between Aeris and longtime pal Tifa, as the story had two female leads seeking affections for the first time. You could choose who to court and who to ignore, but it wouldn't matter. At GDC in 2004, Steven Spielberg said, "I think the real indicator that games have become a storytelling art form will be when somebody confesses that they cried at level 17. He never played Final Fantasy VII. The grand story in 7 was a compilation of a number of inspirations. With the release of Final Fantasy VI, Sakaguchi was faced with the death of his mother. Wrestling with grief led him to develop a number of the concepts in 7, such as Genova. Further depth was drawn from religious beliefs that center on rebirth, or the cycling of souls back to a great mystical body, most apparent in the Lifestream. The name Sephiroth also comes from the mythology of the Kabbalah, referring to spiritual manifestations of the 10 heavenly attributes. Final Fantasy VII was a marvel of technology and a commanding display of limitless imagination. The only thing that lessened its impact was that, were it not for Ifrit, Shiva, and Chocobo riding Moogles, the game was almost unrecognizable as a Final Fantasy title. The series went from being classically medieval to ambiguously futuristic. Castles became skyscrapers, wyverns became helicopters, minecarts became motorcycles, and bows became machine guns. While fans will eternally debate which Final Fantasy is the best, no one can argue that 7 is the most popular, or the one that left the largest stamp on the industry. It was the first Final Fantasy to be released on the PC. The snowboarding minigame was ported to mobile phones in 2005, and in 1998, Cloud, Tifa, Sephiroth, Yuffie, Vincent, and Zack all appeared as playable combatants in the fighting game Airgi's God Bless the Ring. Their inclusion led many to call the PlayStation release the Final Fantasy Fighter. Shortly after the turn of the century, Nomura and Kitase were approached to create a polymorphic project that could expand one of the Final Fantasy games across multiple mediums, in an effort to prove the franchise was capable of breaking out of its Roman numeral namesake. Kitase immediately suggested 7 as the perfect candidate, because its ending left numerous avenues open for the story to continue. The project was called Compilation of Final Fantasy VII. Its ongoing catalog includes Before Crisis, a prequel to 7 focusing on the Turks, Shinra's version of the CIA. The turn-based adventure storyline follows the Shinra investigators as they fight the precursor to the Avalanche introduced in 7. The mobile phone exclusive series ran for 25 episodes in Japan, and the last entry was released on April 1st, 2006. A PSP game was also introduced called Crisis Core, which stars 7's underappreciated hero Zack, Cloud's savior and Aeris's former boyfriend. But the first video game to hit stores under the compilation umbrella came from an unexpected genre, the shooter. Combining a first-person perspective with the back-flipping melee action of Devil May Cry, the last chapter in the saga of Midgar focused on the unfinished business of Vincent Valentine. Dirge of Cerberus was released in Japan on January 26, 2006. Cerberus had Vincent facing off against an army of rogue soldiers called Deep Ground, whose intent was to call forth Omega and end the world. Every living thing eventually returned to the lifestream, and Omega was the entity that would one day collect all the energy and return it to the stars, leaving the planet as a crumbling rock disintegrating into space. Despite Vincent's obvious ease at using Cerberus and dodging enemy fire with Flare, the gameplay in Dirge was admittedly constrictive. This was apparent due to several changes made to the game before its US release 7 months later. Dirge had a mobile add-on called Lost Episode, released on August 18, 2006. And then there's the infamous trailer shown during the Sony press conference at E3 2005 that teased millions by demonstrating what Final Fantasy VII would look like if it was recreated for the PlayStation 3. Although it was solely intended to act as a technical demonstration, many fans mistook it, and still do, as a trailer for a forthcoming rebirth of the PlayStation Classic. Even if the game never returns, the universe of Final Fantasy VII continues to expand. The fan community on both coasts has continually called out 7 as one of the best video games ever created. At a financial results conference in 2006, Square Enix president Yoichi Wada claimed the compilation of Final Fantasy VII would be around for another 10 years, which would end the celebration on its 20th anniversary. Join us next week for another installment in our 13-part Final Fantasy retrospective. In Part 6, we'll highlight the other releases on the PlayStation, 2 sequels that are the best examples of how drastically different a pair of Final Fantasy games can be. One attempted to raise its characters up to tell a feature-length love story, and the other brought the franchise back to its forgotten roots.